Hello, global studies students. It's Mr. Fleming, and I'm here with a little bit change of scenery. I'm in my dining room this time. We got an elliptical machine, exciting stuff. But enough about me. Let's get started on annotating this Immanuel Kant's document. From a writing that he had done. What is the Enlightenment? This is Immanuel Kant talking about what he thinks or how he perceives the Enlightenment to be. First off, let's look for some dates. It's the 18th century, and if you are not too hip to this, that means it's the 1700s, right? Like 1701, like to 1799, maybe. And then when 1801 comes around, that's the 19th century, right? Okay. All right, so 18th century, and I think be more specific, 1784 is when he is making this statement. Uh, any other dates? As if I look through here, yep, 1784. Good, good. All right, we also need to now look at key people, groups, or places. Let's look through this. Let's go ahead and read this thing. Enlightenment is man's emergence from his self-imposed knowledge. Knowledge is the inability to use one's own understanding without another's guidance. This knowledge is self-imposed if its cause lies not in lack of understanding, but in indecision and lack of courage to use one's own mind without another's guidance. Dare to know. Have the courage to use your own understanding is therefore the motto of the Enlightenment. Let's just do this paragraph at a time. I don't necessarily have any key groups or people. I think I had highlighted man's and the idea that it should be like humankind. We wouldn't say man, we'd say humankind now. But I think that's the key people, right? Enlightenment is humankind's emergence from from its self-imposed knowledge, right? So maybe I could have that as yellow. But let's see, pink, right? Main ideas. I have that highlighted. Enlightenment is man's emergence from his self-imposed knowledge. Or like trying to be more using their own reason to figure things out, I think is what we'll see as the gist of this comes, right? Um, and then I have lack of courage to use one's own mind without another's guidance. The comment that I had made on there was that we go to college or school for guidance, so you really can't grow and learn without some guidance. So I don't know that I know what he's trying to say is like don't just wholeheartedly listen to somebody else, but it kind of comes off as like I shouldn't listen to anybody's guidance, and I don't know if I agree with that completely. But I don't know. I think he's more meaning like just don't, like an example from here would be like don't rely on the church's word, like question things yourself, right? Or don't rely on that absolute monarch's word. Okay. Have the courage to use your own understanding. That's what else I have highlighted as important in that paragraph. Keep going. Laziness and cowardice are the reasons why such a large part of mankind gladly remains minors all their lives, long after nature has freed them from external guidance. They are the reasons why it is so easy for others to set themselves up as guardians. Just basically saying laziness and cowardice. I have that as a main point of this paragraph. And I also have minors as a one of our words, like a child, right? Someone who's cared for by somebody else. And I think what that statement is saying is that laziness, not wanting to look at things. I guess an example of nowadays would be like just taking whatever the news channel is like, or instead of or just tuning out and looking at your phone all the time or something like that, right? Laziness and cowardice are the reasons why such a large part of humankind they're afraid. They're afraid to find out the truth, right? And what he's saying here at the end, he says, these are reasons why it's so easy for others to set themselves as guardians, right? Like you don't question, you don't wonder as these, maybe I'll keep using the church as an example because it's an easy one, but you just take it at face value. You never question it. Yes, they're going to be bossing you around, right? They're your guardians. They've set themselves up. Okay. It is so comfortable to be a minor. If I have a book that thinks for me, a pastor who acts as my conscience, a physician who prescribes my diet, and so on, then I have no need to exert myself. I have no need to think if I can pay, others will take care of that. So it's like that idea, I guess, maybe in the modern times of just like tuning out, right? I have a dietitian that thinks for me and tells me what to eat. My wife tells me what I should spend my money on. There's someone always guiding you, right? And that's not a good thing. He's arguing that it's not. Well, I said I think the modern world is very chaotic, and that we do not have the time to be educated in everything. think that you have to look into the institutions that you align yourself with, but sometimes after the initial check-in, you just let that aspect of your life go on autopilot. So I think there's some truth to that. Let's see here. Okay, where did I stop reading here? Those guardians, and guardians again with a vocabulary, I believe. Was it? I don't know. Maybe not. No. Oh, no. People. I had it as a people in place. It's like a group, the Guardians. And I think he would probably be alluding to like the leaders of the church, the leaders of the like absolute monarchies. I think that's who he's referring to as guardians. Those guardians who have kindly taken supervision upon themselves to see to it that the overwhelming majority of mankind, among them the entire fair sex, he's referring to women, should consider this step to maturity not only as hard but is extremely dangerous. So that, like the folks that are in charge are trying to tell you, this is what I get from this, is that they're trying to tell you, if you're trying to think for yourself what's scary, you might not get the right answer, or, you might find out something you don't like, it's extremely dangerous. They're trying to talk you out of like thinking for yourself. So that's why I had it underlined as important. First, these guardians make their domestic cattle stupid and carefully prevent the docile creatures from taking a single step without the leading strings to which they have fastened them. Then they show them the danger that would threaten them if they should try to walk by themselves. Again, you make their domestic cattle stupid and carefully prevent the docile creatures. Again, it used to be I don't know how to say it. What am I trying to say here? They don't want you to be educated. They don't want you to be smart. And you start questioning things, right? That's why they want you to stay. You are the domestic cattle in this situation, right? The humans that are living at that time period. That's why I thought this was an important thing to underline. Thus, it is very difficult for the individual to work himself out of the knowledge, which has become almost second nature to him, right? You don't even question things. That's what he's saying. It's like become second nature. I'm guilty of this too, even today. It is more nearly possible, however, for the public, I had highlighted public as a group of people, right, to enlighten itself. Indeed, if it is only given freedom, enlightenment is almost inevitable. I said, I don't know if I agree with this. I think that freedom alone is not enough. I think to achieve enlightenment, you would need education and infrastructure, which freedom does not ensure. Okay. So I guess it's one thing. Like, what am I trying to say here? If we use like Maslow's hierarchy, right? If I have if there isn't an infrastructure, if I can't find food, if there's nothing like that, I'm not going to be able to have time to think because I'm going to be hungry all the time. I'm going to be searching for food, right? So I don't have time to ponder these great ideas. So that's what I mean by I just don't think it's freedom by itself. I think you have to have some other things there. There will always be a few independent thinkers, even among the self-appointed guardians of the multitude. Once such men have thrown off the yoke of knowledge, they will spread about them the spirit of reasonable appreciation of man's value and his duty to think for himself. This enlightenment requires nothing but freedom, and the most innocent of all that may be called freedom to make public use of one's reason in all matters. Now I hear the cry from all sides, do not argue, the officer says, do not argue, drill. That's a vocabulary. Drill is practice, like a military drill. The tax collector, do not argue, pay. The pastor, do not argue, believe, right? Don't argue, don't think, don't try to question, I think is what he's meaning here. Only one ruler in the world says, argue as much as you please, but obey. So we find restrictions on freedom everywhere, but which restriction is harmful to enlightenment? Which restriction is innocent? And which advances enlightenment? I reply, the public use of one's reason must be free at all times, and this alone can bring enlightenment to mankind. When one does not deliberately attempt to keep men in barbarism, they will gradually work out of that condition by themselves. So the way I take that last bit, it might be a little turn of phrase, but I think that like when one does not deliberately attempt to keep men in barbarism, they will gradually work out of it. So I think he's saying those guardians, those people who are running things, are trying to keep you in this idea of barbarism, of not thinking for yourself, not using reason, right? And if they can do that to you, right, then you'll just stay in this perpetual system, and they will be able to control and stay in power. Okay. All right. So I think that's why I had highlighted that pink as well. So that gets us through the annotating of this, right? But here's the value. I decided to go with origin. This is from one of the major Enlightenment thinkers. It shows how they personally thought about the movement, and how like through their lens, through their eyes, how he believes this movement is. A limitation. The purpose. I said, I thought if he's defining enlightenment, or even just to what he is defining it as, I feel this is limited. It only looks at the movement through one's self reason. I mean, there's other aspects. There's like a social contract. I mean, he hits a lot of it with the self reason, right? But I think there's other bits and pieces that he's left out. A summary kind of saying that the public should think for themselves about the world. Do not allow others to blindly lead you or assume that they know everything. Investigate on your own and decide if you agree or disagree with those around you. That's what I took it from. Questions. How inclusive would Kant be with women? I know he mentions that, but like he doesn't spell it out. And I know about the Enlightenment, and I know that it's like, women are left behind. And maybe some of you had in eighth grade, maybe they made you read like Remember the Women, and it's like Jane Addams, and she's talking to her husband John about, hey, we'd like some freedom too. So I'm curious, how inclusive would he actually be? What are Kant's thoughts about the people that are non-European? That's always the question too, with like this enlightenment. You're saying think for yourselves, kind of question authority, or question the church, question absolute monarchy. Should the folks in Portugal, or I mean in West Africa, be questioning their colonization? I mean, how would Kant feel about that? And then 3, how many sources would there be for people to become more educated and think for themselves? My point is, if he's screaming about reason and using facts, what's the education system? How many people are literate? How old are you when you become literate? Do you have opportunities to get more education? Just who knows, right? All right, I think that takes us through this. Have a good evening or afternoon or whatever you are while you're working on this, and I will see you next time.